And that picture was the first holy crap slap in the face. You have to make a decision. Your identity does not match reality.
Welcome to the SkilledDad Podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story, and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the skilled dad. Hey guys, and welcome to the SkilledDad Podcast. My name's Zach Reeser. I'm your host. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're glad to have you. And if you're one of the ones that keep coming back, man, this is what it's all about. The community that we're building to then learn from other great dads that are doing big things. And we're here together to help equip each other with knowledge and the things that we can go and do and apply and actually take action on so that we can start making an impact for the future, starting with here and then our kids. And today, I'm really pumped. And, I say this quite a bit. I've listened when I edit, and I'm like, I say pumped a lot. And I'm like, this is one of my words I go to, Bronson. But hey,
I think it's an age thing.
Is it
right? And if you were maybe 10 or 15 years older, you'd probably say stoked.
Okay. All right. So that is an indication of my age. Well, okay, cool. Well, more than half of you are my age. So get with me. We're pumped. Here to pump you up. But I really am. Like whenever I, just for context, and then I want to introduce this awesome guest. Whenever I'm on here with somebody, I've always had a conversation with them prior to it. I don't just jump on blindly. And this gentleman and I had a great conversation. And at the end of it, I'm just like supercharged. For any of you kids with Fortnite, that play with your kids, it's like taking that nitro and like, slamming on your feet and just running. That's what Bronson Dant did to me after we talked last time. So I've been looking forward to this. So today, I've got Coach Bronson Dant with me. He is a dad of 4. He is an author. His last book was the Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness book. And then the new one that's coming out is Body Confident. So his area of expertise, as you might guess, is in the health corridor. And so we're going to talk about some of that. And Bronson, I just want to officially welcome you to the SkilledDad Podcast. Thank you for being on here with me.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Zach. I appreciate it. And like you said, when we talked the first time, I walked away feeling like this is a good place for me to be, right? This is a good place. I think there's a lot of alignment. There's a lot of focus on trying to help men, dads, find their place and be okay with where they are in the journey, understanding that it's a journey. We're not perfect. We've all got progress to make. I don't know a single dad who doesn't think they've done something wrong and wish they could do things over again. Right. So understanding that we're all there, my kids are all grown and moved out and doing their own thing. And I think every day, there's things that I regret, but then there's also things where I see what they're doing and I'm like, man, somebody did something right. So I felt really good about our talk and I'm looking forward to this one.
Oh yeah. Well, to that point, yeah, we do, but we're people and we're going to have that and we're probably going to keep doing that. What I love about those that I know that listen to this podcast is that they want to do something about it and they want to continue to learn. And that's why I'm also excited because your kids are gone, right? You are further down the path than some of us. So we can learn from some of those things. And a lot of those things that you see that are good, we're instilled. I'm going to take a bet that a lot of those were instilled by you. And so we've got good, we've got not good. And being skilled is kind of like one of those aspirational things that it's going to take some time. And I don't know that we ever actually get there because everything changes once we get there. So we'll see. But Bronson, I want to hand it over to you, sir. And, just tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll take the conversation from there.
Yeah. All right. Let's start off my journey as a dad. Well, we won't talk about the whole journey because it's pretty long. I got, let's see, I'm 52 years old. My youngest is 21. So that gives
Okay.
you an idea of where things at. My oldest, gosh, she's got to be 26 now, something like that. After a certain point, you just forget they're all in their 20s and you kind of forget exactly what number they're at. Um, but yeah, my journey as a dad, has been very interesting. Well, I won't get into all the details, but I got divorced with their mother when they were younger, and then spent a lot of time separated, a lot of time traveling to see them, a lot of time kind of figuring out what that balance was between trying to be in their life and do things while living 400 or 500 miles apart.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of aspect of virtual connection and drive. There were times. So they lived in Massachusetts. I lived in the DC, Maryland, DC area, Baltimore, DC area, and there were periods of years where I would drive to Boston multiple times a month just to spend weekends with them, or fly, or would have them fly down, whatever, back and forth, things like that. And so my challenge as a dad has been maintaining some kind of connection long distance.
Mhm.
Just because of the nature of the work that I do, I'm a government contractor. Where I work, what I do requires specific physical locations, and what I can do. I can't just be anywhere in the country, and maintain my career. And that was the main reason why that separation happened in the first place. But
Mhm.
the challenge for me, I think, has been trying to impart the things that I know and believe, to help them live their own lives and figure things out for themselves while balancing that distance and not being there as consistently as I wish I could be.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
then understanding that in that process, is particularly as they get older, this was the hardest thing and still is the hardest thing for me to deal with is, as they get older, even when you're in person, even if I was living with them, there's that aspect of they're getting older, they're trying to do their own things, they're trying to separate from
Mm.
me. They can't develop their own identity. They can't figure out things for themselves if I'm always around. So it was one of those things where I was going up every weekend for the first year or two. Then it was every couple weeks I'd go up. Then it was once a month I'd go up. Then it was every month, every couple months I'd go up. And then it was phone calls. And then it was, okay, now they're all in high school. They're doing their things. Now some are in college, some are in high school. Now they're all in college or they've all graduated. And then it's all phone calls and instant messaging and things like that. And now it's like, where did all that, what happened? How did all this happen?
You
Right?
blinked. Yeah.
You blinked and then all of a sudden it's like, what is going on? So that's been my journey as a dad. Along that process, obviously there's been, my life individually, career wise, relationship wise, um, getting into health and fitness. I've only been in health and fitness for maybe 14 years. And before that, it was 20 plus years of IT, many years of government contracting, working in IT, doing systems design, project management, program management, stuff like that. Um, and we talked about regrets earlier. My biggest regret is not knowing what I know now from a health and fitness perspective when I had more individual one-on-one daily contact with my kids.
Mm. Mhm.
That's the biggest regret because of all of the things that I see everybody in the world going through. I know my kids are dealing with the same things.
Mm.
Knowing that, my oldest has two kids and knowing that she doesn't have the knowledge from the experience of living with me, the experience that I have when I've tried to talk to her about health and fitness after the fact. But
Mhm.
because there hasn't been as much of a connect, now I'm going into her life saying you're doing everything wrong is the perception. Right. So I can't go in out of the blue and say, hey, I recently learned all this stuff. I had none of this while you were growing up. I've never exposed you to this at all before, but now I learned all this stuff. Now you have kids. Let me help you. It's not going to be seen like that. It's going to be
Right.
seen as dad's coming in telling me, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't raise my kids right. It's like, no, that's not the thing. So that's been another one of my challenges is being like, how can I impart the knowledge that I have about what it actually means to live a high quality of life as a parent,
Mhm.
um, without pushing them away in that message. because I did at first. When I first got into this, when I first started realizing things about fitness and nutrition, and it just completely turned my entire life upside down. Just like anybody, we start something new and we love it, and then everybody needs to know about it.
Right.
It's the best thing for everybody, and that's
Fitness
what it was for me.
evangelist.
Yeah, I become the advantage. When I started doing CrossFit many years ago, and then everybody needed to do CrossFit until I realized that not everybody needs to do CrossFit. I started doing different things over the years, and it's like everybody can do this, but that doesn't mean they need to, or that I need to try and make them do it.
Right.
And we all go through that process, and I did that, and it pushed them away very much at first. Which is one of the reasons why I am passionate now about creating content, making videos, posting on social media, writing papers, getting published as an author, writing books. For me, one of the main ways that I can put information out, I don't know if they're ever going to read it, but if I don't do it, then they never will.
Right.
Right. So I can't go to them and say, hey, here's a paper I wrote just for you, because that'll never get read. But I can write a book and put it out there. And then maybe one of these days they'll say, hey, Dad's written 3, 4, 5, 6, 200 books, whatever it is. Maybe I should look at one of them one time, and they might get something out of it. And that's really one of the driving factors for why I'm on here, why I'm doing things like this.
Yeah. Well, somewhat separate, but it's the same. I appreciate that in what you're doing, and the mindset of, if you just go and like tell them, you could get that pushback, right?
Right.
But if you don't do anything, and so you can do it and they may never read it, but if you don't do it, they'll never read it.
Exactly.
That's the same thing about this podcast. I could do it and maybe no one ever listens except for my mom. Hey mom, how you doing? Or, my wife or whoever. But if I don't do it, then there's going to be a lot of people that could have listened, that didn't hear from you or any of these other dads, that could have taken something away. Right. So now is the opportunity for anybody that might be listening to this at whatever time period it is. It could be a year from now. It could be a month from now, that they might take some away, and you have helped impact them and their mindset and what they do in their family. So I say all that guys, if there's something on your mind, I'm talking to you, the listener, or you watching, if there's something on your mind that you're like really wanting to do because you're passionate about it and it helps people, and the intent is that it helps people, not to go make money necessarily, but like it helps people, go do it. Get your MVP, minimum viable product, and go do it. If no one ever reads it, that's fine. Someone will eventually. No one ever listens, that's fine, but someone will eventually. If it's something with your wife, you've been thinking, oh, I should go do that, go do that one. But that's just my encouragement. So I appreciate you saying that. I do have one question for you. And you had mentioned before, like kind of the separation, in the time period of like, it was driving up every weekend. Right. So I understand that lifestyle. I grew up in that lifestyle for a period of my life. I get it. And there's a lot that goes into that. So a lot of you dads that go do that, you're doing it. That's the main thing. And then it became, every other week, and then a month, and then text and phone call. At what age were your kids when that separation started to happen?
Well, because there's like a 5 or almost 6 year range.
Sure.
My youngest was, I think, 6 when we first separated. My oldest was 10 or 11 maybe. So between the ages of probably 10 to 15 is where they were when that started slowing down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of recent conversations around this idea of you only get 18 summers with your kids.
Yep.
And then really, and I'm not there yet, so I'm like soaking it in. I'm trying to get my tan in the sun of this, where my kids like me phase. But really around the age of 11, 12, 13 is when it really starts to do this. And I saw some stats recently on something where it's the amount of time that you spend per week on average that most people do. At least currently. Now, that might change in the future. More people start sitting around the table. But that's why I was curious, What's that?
I wish more people would start sitting around the table.
Hey man, that's I just had an episode. If you listen to the one with Jared Haley,
Mhm.
and it just came out time of recording, but we talk about that and how much power's around that simple act. Um, okay, but with but with your books and your content, is that almost a way? It's your passion, but is it also a way to kind of connect with your kids, or hope that you do in the
Um,
future?
I hope, full transparency, I have a great relationship with my son. I have an okay relationship with my youngest daughter, and my two oldest currently aren't talking to me.
Mm,
And there's a lot that goes into that. We don't need to get into all the details of that,
sure.
but it's also one of those things that we have to understand that everybody has their own thing that they're going through and they're dealing with, and they all process and deal with things differently. And as a parent, it's the hardest thing. So, a little backstory, I did that to my parents. There was about 12 years where I didn't talk to anybody in my family when I graduated high school to when I got married, had started having kids, moved away. Like it was a long time that my parents had to just trust the process that one of these days he's going to grow up and he's going to realize, hey, my family's important to me, and he's going to get in touch again. And that's what happened. Now, we see each other all the time. They just were over here at my place for 4th of July. Um, so I'm in that, I've had to go to my parents and say, hey, how did you survive that time where I didn't want to have anything to do with you guys? And get some feedback and support and like, hey, it's okay. There's no guarantee, but you also have to trust that you did what you could. You did the best that you could with what you had and where you were. And you've expressed your position and where you are and your support for them. It's up to them at this point. They are adults now. They're living their lives. Um, all you can hope is that at some point, whatever they're going through brings them back, you know? And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. The whole journey of this parenting thing, I'm sure you've talked about this before, right? There's no guidebook. Everybody's got um, a different process, a different experience is what it means to be a parent. We've all got our own experiences that we learn from what we've seen our parents do, which I don't know a single parent who hasn't done things wrong and hasn't done things right. Uh, I think it's one of the interesting observations that I've made as a coach for the past 10 plus years is every single person I've ever met in the world is messed up. And it's
Mm,
always because of our growing up situation. There isn't a single person in the world that doesn't have some kind of, and we use the word trauma. But that's not, we think of trauma as some drastic thing, right? Trauma is anything, any misconception, limiting belief, fear, um, anything that shapes our reality in a way that isn't actual reality is
mm,
something that's caused trauma. So it can be something as simple as, you know, I've got clients who are hyper focused on being perfect all the time because their parents talked about their sibling being perfect in things all the time and never talked about them being perfect in things all the time.
mm.
Right. So
Yeah,
they never felt value. They never felt worth. So they had to try and prove over and over again that they can be just as perfect as their sibling. That's trauma. That's not intentional trauma. That's not, abuse. That's not neglect and all these other things. That's just a parent not being aware that the words that they were saying about one kid was affecting another kid a different way.
sure.
It's just an awareness thing. It's experiencing. So we've all got that. Um, so yeah, it's challenging, and again, the passion that I have for writing and the passion that I have for doing this is very much a good percentage of it has to do with trying to, I think, on some level, show my kids that, and this is a really this may resonate, it may not, show my kids that I'm better now than I was then,
Mm,
that I've learned more, that I understand more, that I'm more aware of the impact that I can have on other people's lives, including theirs,
yeah.
than I ever was when I 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I'm unpacking that in my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
This is interesting because this is a level of the conversation. I talk a lot about whys.
yeah.
What is your why and what is your why not? I talk about that constantly. And this is an aspect of my list of whys that I don't often get a chance to talk about
Mm.
because most of my clientele are women over 40. Most of my subscribers, I think 80% of my subscribers are women over 40. I don't have a large male base that I think would understand this kind of conversation. So this is really refreshing for me to it's kind of cathartic a little bit to kind of get some of this stuff out. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, the reason I'm unpacking it is because, well, let me just tell you this. First, I appreciate it and I appreciate you sharing it. Second, you're not the only one that that goes through kind of this thought process and experience, and you're also not the only one that doesn't talk about it a lot, right? And so, and part of that is in my conversations and just research on it, a lot of specifically men don't have a big group around them, not even have a small group of men around them.
Yeah.
And so those of you that have joined over and over, you're like, here we go. Say it. I'm like, one of the biggest things that you can go do right now is find a couple of guys that you can get close with and form your squad, your band of brothers, your whatever you want to call it. I really don't care
Yeah.
what you call it. Make up a fun name. But get your guys that you can take your armor off with and talk to about these things because but that's really important. When you're talking about something you said earlier, which was your kids are grown. I mean, you're by the way, as a grandpa, I want to learn we're going to talk about next because you got the baby face and you're rocking it, right? And so that's where I want to be is healthy in a place that I can get up and go golfing and walk the course with my kids. But for my kids, like right now, they're catching it, right? We can tell them and all that, but they're watching. And that's the idea. That's what popped in my head. And it was from Quan Wilcox. He runs a podcast called Mediocre Dads. Awesome guy. He's active military right now, and started this. And he said something that was in reference to his kids, right? And stuff that he's seen on the ball fields, things like that. And it's like, how can we go after our kids and not go after, but we're going to go to our kids like, hey, don't give up. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. You got to push harder. Da, 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 da. And they're like, and he stopped and he said that the kid goes, well, how can you tell me to go and push harder when I've seen you quit your whole life?
Powerful.
And I was just like, it's just, I just blew up the mic with the pop and that's where I don't want to be. Right. So I think about that when I'm doing stuff because they're watching, they're seeing, and they're going to take that. So when we talk about the health piece, where that's kind of a way for you to connect, it's a way to help other people as well from what you've learned in the last 14 years. Well, here's an opportunity for us guys as listeners to also learn some things that we can do now to potentially instill those habits and the experience up their XP level with something that's normal and like, what does that health side look like so that we're not trying to like come back later and be like, hey, you should listen to me. I'm, older and wiser and
Yeah.
all that.
I think the thing you said there that's the most important is that you didn't say this, but I'm going to turn your words around a little bit.
Translate for
Not
me.
about the health. It's about the demonstration of what it takes to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with your fitness, with your nutrition, with your business, with your relationships, with anything that you're doing. If your kids are seeing you stop when things get hard, changing jobs every year because you don't like the boss, whatever it may be, right? I'm going to start a hobby. Oh, no, it's too much time. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. There are patterns that our kids pick up on that we don't even know we have. And often this may hurt a little bit. The things that we see our kids doing that we don't like them doing, they're getting from us.
That's what I
Okay?
was thinking as you were saying it. It's the best
Yeah.
mirror.
Right.
Mhm.
So if you're looking at your kid and you're trying to get them to be consistent and want to go to practice and work hard all the time, but you keep talking about how you want to lose 10 pounds, but you never go to the gym because you're always air quotes too busy. Maybe there's a reason they don't want to go to practice.
Yeah.
You know, how in the world can we ever expect to demand anything or expect anything from our kids if we're not willing to do it first?
Mhm.
This is something that, I spent 17 years in the military. This is something that I learned early on as a leader that is number one, because it's something they actually teach you. And if you're good, you'll pick it up. Number two, I had many leaders who didn't do this. And that is, I will never ask my guys, my team, my squad to do anything that I've never done or were not willing to do myself. And it's the same as a dad. I can't go to my kids and say, "Hey, you got to do this
Mhm.
because I said so." If because I said so is your reasoning to get your kids to do anything, look, I get the whole idea of you shouldn't have to explain yourself to your kids. You're in charge. It's your house. All the authority, all that stuff. I get it. If you can't explain it to your kids, there's a difference between whether you should or not. There are circumstances where it might make sense, and there are circumstances where you do not need to say anything about why they should do it. They need to just do it.
Mhm.
But you should always be able to explain it.
Mhm.
If you can't explain it, you have no right to ask them to do it. That's my philosophy.
I agree with you 100%. I would for for the person that you were referencing that changes jobs every year
Mhm.
because they don't like their boss, and maybe ask why don't you like your boss? I mean,
Yep.
what you just outlined is almost like a leadership one-on-one. And whether we like it or not, as soon as we become dad, you've been promoted and you
Mhm.
are the leader. And there's positional power, and then there's, you know,
Oh, here we go.
positional power is not earned
Yep.
and doesn't usually move the needle. But we do have the opportunity to then learn servant leadership
Mhm.
and what that is and how we do it to gain the respect that then helps move forward and mitigate the because I told you so's. Um, that's I prefer.
As a dad, the first way we have to understand the number one way to empower our children is to show them that it's possible and how to do it.
Mhm.
We can't tell them that it's possible. They have to see that it's possible. They have to see us do it first.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what we say.
We're on the same wavelength. I love it. Um, okay, so now somebody's listening to this thing and they understand it. Like, I understand, like, I can understand something. And that's where, um, we the podcast is all output here and it's all intake from those of you that are listening, but we can't have that conversation. Now, if you want to have the
Yeah.
conversation, reach out to me because I'd love to have the conversation. But what I've run into is I know what I want to do. I just don't know how to do it.
Mhm.
And then there's like, I'm going to read all the books and I'm going to listen to all the podcasts. I'm going to go to all the websites and so on and so forth. You've got a lot of knowledge. That's great. You're probably good at trivia. But when you put it into action, that is where you can start to gain your skills. And so, and when you start, like if you're building a project, like, my Zoom background, which is not a Zoom background, when you actually get those tools out and you go build your first table, because I know there's a lot of you out there that are listening that don't know how to use these tools because people ask me about that. That's the hard skill stuff. Stay tuned on that. Start somewhere, and your first project's going to suck. It's going to absolutely suck unless you're a savant.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then you're going to learn from it. And then the second take, just like anything, guys, the first one's usually the hardest and longest and not the best. And then it gets better and better and better. That's skill. And you can apply it to the conversation, whatever you want to do. But you can't up your skill level if you don't go do it. So because I really want to talk about the health side of it, because I think that relates to like the first time going to the gym. If somebody's
Yeah.
not gone to the gym or whatever it is, like you started 14 years ago, what got you into it? And then why did you kind of go with it? And why would someone else, what's the importance of them going and trying it out and seeing if they can love it and maybe just do it anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the way you just ended that question, the first thing that popped in my head is, I don't care if you love it. You don't have to love it. Right. As a
Yep.
father, as a dad, if you follow the concept of being a provider and caretaker for your family and an example for your kids, I don't go to work every day because I love it. Now, I do like what I do, but there's a lot of aspects of my job that I absolutely can't stand. But I still need a paycheck to pay the bills and take care of things that I need to take care of as a provider. Um, I just had this conversation with a client yesterday about his desire. I do have a couple male clients. Don't get me wrong. I do deal with some dads. We actually had a similar conversation last night, actually on a check-in call, and we were talking about his desire to live the kind of life that he wants with his kid as his kid is getting older, because he knows he's going to blink one day and that kid's going to be off doing his own thing, and he's not going to have that time. He wants to be able to be present with his son when he's with his son and not be tired and distracted and lethargic and not engaged. And, let's just watch TV today. I can't go for a walk today because I'm too tired, that kind of stuff. Right. Um,
Right.
and understanding that identity is what he's trying to match with his habits.
Mm.
The lifestyle that you want to live has to match the identity that you want to have. So this is where my journey starts. I was in my late 30s, mid to late 30s, and we were at the beach. My oldest daughter took a picture of me sitting in a chair on the beach. Um, Not right away, but later on that day, she was showing me all the pictures, and I was like, whoa, 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 hold on a second. Let's go back to that. And if you're interested in what that picture was, it's in my last book and it'll be in my next book as well, because it's the thing that kicked the whole process off.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on a chair. I got man boobs. I got a gut. I'm like, who the hell is that guy? Like, wait a second. Because I was the guy. I still pictured in my head, my identity was tied to the 18-year-old who got out of high school after doing 2 years in high school of weight training as a class in high school. We had weightlifting was a class I went to every day in high school. Right. Then joining the army, at, 18, 19 years old, being very in shape, sub 8% body fat. Like there was nothing physically that I could not do.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the army, doing all the stuff we did in the army, I was infantry combat engineer. I did all the fun stuff. And going from that to fast forwarding 10, 15 years, going, wait a second, how did that guy become this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I never changed that picture in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I was that guy, right, who wear muscle shirts to the gym, thinking I was all jacked and looking good, but that I had reverse body dysmorphia.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I thought I was this thing that I wasn't. I wasn't representing that. And that picture was the first holy crap slap in the face. You have to make a decision. Your identity does not match reality.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do one of two things. You have to accept reality and change your identity to match where you actually are, or you have to reestablish the identity that you want and start doing the things that person does. And I decided I'm not going to be this. This is not my reality. This is not where I want to be. This is where I want to go. I want to go back to being that guy who was able to do anything, never had to say no to anything, managed his life and his health and his physical independence with intent, and set an example. The embarrassment that I felt that my daughter was the one that took that picture,
Mm.
I cannot even express what was going through my head there. And here's the thing, two biggest things, right? We're talking about the deep stuff, identity, all that kind of stuff. The two biggest emotions, embarrassment and shame. Because here's the deal. Not only was the idea of my daughter being the one that took that picture embarrassing to me, but the idea that the woman that I was dating at the time, we got married later, um, my future wife at the time was at the beach with us, saw the same picture. And then I have to look at her, look at that picture, look at her and go, hell are you doing with me?
Mm.
Right? How in the world can you look at me and be physically attracted to that? Right? It makes you
Yeah.
question the relationship. It makes you question what's the like. There were so many things that jumped into my head immediately
Mm-hmm.
that just set me on this is not where I want to be. I have to make a change. And that was another visceral emotional connection to why I wanted to make a change, because it's not who I wanted to be as a dad. It's not who I wanted to be as a man. And it's not who I wanted to be as a partner.
Mm.
That's where I think got started.
Mm. So your aha moment. So what I'm hearing too is that that shame was almost what's the word? It was contrary to the ideal state that you really wanted to be. So it was almost like letting yourself down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm a type A guy, in case you couldn't
mm.
tell. I'm naturally confident. I'm naturally the guy who's going to go out there and get in front and try to get things done. And that was a moment in my life where I just wanted to go hide in the corner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not me. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
And it put me in a place where I had to make some tough choices and say, look, this is the direction I'm going and I just keep doing it, or something's got to change. And that, that I decided to make a change. And then from there, Jude, it just snowballed into all sorts of other different things. But yeah, it's been a fantastic journey, but it all got started because of a picture of me sitting on the beach.
Isn't it funny how one little thing can all of a sudden just start the dominoes?
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I can't speak for anyone that's listening. I can speak for myself. I totally get where you're coming from. And I've gone through not the exact same experience, but very close. And guys, if you want to know, what's what, ask your kids. If you've got the kind of relationship, right? So I had, she was a little younger at the time. I think she was 5 or something like that. And this was last year. And we're getting ready to go somewhere. And she goes, "Oh, Dad, you're looking good." And she goes, "Your arms, like you look so strong." And then she walked up and she goes, "Except for right here. Except for right here." I was like, "What? What? You look really good. But just in the middle. You don't, I can only really tell when you take your shirt off, wear something tight." And I was just like, "Oh, see ya." Right? Because it's like a dad creep. But I think what you and I talked about off the mic, too, is what that did is I had like this, uh, I think it was more of a denial because I kind of knew, right? You can tell how tight your pants are. But I was like, I still look good. I'm okay right now. But there's the confidence that can start with that, especially for us as guys and how we look, because we're more visual. To your point about like, how could she be with me? Luckily for us, women are not as visual as we are. And so that's, a lot of us,
Well,
outpunted our coverage,
yes,
but
and we can talk about the corollary here, because women are not visual, but they are attracted to physical ability.
yeah.
They are attracted to presence.
Yep.
So here's a thing, and this is when we talk about confidence. Men, it's good to feel good. Everybody, man, woman, doesn't make a difference. If you look good, you're going to feel a little bit better about your own looks. But that's not confidence. That's pride.
Good
Okay.
point.
Confidence, because pride is a response to appearance or a response to status. Okay. Confidence is developed after you build trust. You have confidence in your relationship with your spouse after you've built the trust to know that he or she's not going to harm you and they've got your back. That builds confidence, practice, and repetition of the expectations that you have set for your relationship. Confidence for a man is the same with themselves. When I go to the gym and make the repetitive, consistent decision to improve my physical ability, I can then trust myself. I can trust my body is going to perform when I need it to, and I can trust that I can execute when needed to protect and care for my family. I know I can walk into any room ever, and my family or the people that I care about never have to worry because I can do what I need to do physically given any circumstance. It's confidence. And until we get that, none of the other stuff really matters.
I like that. If somebody's listening to this and are kind of feeling the nudge of like they know they need to do something, but they're not really sure what, well, they might know somewhere back there.
They already know.
I know they know.
Everybody already knows.
What are a couple of things that Coach Bronson would tell them? Here's some things that just get you started, like get your momentum going, whether you want to or not. And I totally agree. And part of the reason I hedged when I said find out if they love it is because I was like, I don't care if you love it, you got to go do it. Just like the dishes, like it's got to happen. Otherwise, it's going to get messy and nasty. So, what would you tell them?
Yeah. Get in touch with your emotional conviction. What is the reason you want to change in the first place? The biggest challenge, and you may have it, you may think that you have an idea, but don't settle for the superficial, easy answer. Look and dig for the emotional, visceral, painful thing that you have to dig into about why you want to make a change. Right? If you can describe why you're saying you want to if you can describe to someone else why you want to get in shape, why you want to change your diet, why you want to get healthy, whatever the thing it is you're saying you want to do, if you can explain it to somebody and you don't use an emotion when you describe it, if you don't use the words despair, anxiety, fear, depression, regret, denial, embarrassment, shame, guilt, happiness, sadness, all happy or sad, good or bad emotion. If there isn't an emotion attached to your description, you probably don't really have it yet. And you need to keep digging. So, because here's the deal. Change is not easy. We know this. I'm going to say some things that everybody already knows. Okay. Change is not easy. Change doesn't happen overnight. Change takes repetitive action against things that we've already established that we would rather do instead. When we try to stop doing the things we would rather do, a lot of the reason we would rather do those is because we have an emotional trigger. We have a habit loop. We have something that is tied to what we're doing there. And the only way to break that or not do that is to have an emotion that's stronger than the emotion we're trying to avoid. So if I'm emotionally triggered, if I come home and I'm stressed from work and for whatever reason, something happens at home, or I just know when I get home, I'm going to have this other thing to do and I'm stressed out. So on the way home, I stop and get, 3 ho-hos so I can eat on the ride home before I get home. Right. That emotional connection of me trying to deal with or avoid that stress, the ho-hos are going to help me deal with the stress. What is my conviction? And I'm going to say conviction, not emotion. What is my conviction for not doing that? Because I know that's not going to do X, Y, or Z for my goals. Why is it important to me? What is the motivation? What is the reason that not having those ho-hos on the way home from work is more likely what I would do? That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it does. Okay.
So that's the first thing.
No, I
Start
love
with
it.
the why. Start with why, or why not? Because the things you don't want in your life can be just as important,
Yeah.
and often
No,
are more effective.
the thing that you're avoiding.
The thing you're avoiding, yeah,
You don't want to be your dad. You don't want to be
exactly.
like, that it comes a lot. Like, so,
Yep.
okay. Before you go to point two, I
Yep.
don't want to throw you off track. So, and if you see me look down, I'm taking notes. And so I think I'm curious your response. So what about the guys that say, you just said a bunch about emotions. You said a lot of emotional words. Like, isn't that kind of like a non-manly thing to do? I don't feel comfortable doing that because it's feelings.
Yeah, yeah. So you would honestly be surprised how many women I get that from too.
Mm,
Not because
I
of
am
a
surprised.
gender, not because of a gender thing, but just a general emotion. I actually had a female client tell me specifically when I was on a coaching call with her, asking about her why. What is it what is it she's trying to do? She literally said, I have spent my entire life avoiding my emotions. I don't want to be too happy. I don't want to be too sad.
Mm-hmm.
Because her father had established an environment when she was growing up that there was no emotion allowed on either direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's not healthy. Here's the deal. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. You are a human being first. And human beings are emotional creatures. Our emotions have a direct link to our brain, which controls our body. If you sit here, I just try to go to bed one night. Tell me this doesn't work. Go to bed. If you don't believe that human beings are emotional creatures and our emotions don't control our bodies, I'm going to do two examples of what happens with emotions and how it impacts our physiology, which is our physical body. Go lay down and get ready for bed one night. Lay down in bed, and then get as comfortable as you possibly can. Do all the things to try to get a good night's sleep. And then before you fall asleep, think about the scariest or most stressful thing you can possibly think of. And what would happen if that happened to you right now? And then see how long it takes you to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The impact that just the thought has is going to impact how well you sleep and how fast you sleep and how deep you sleep. For that entire night could potentially be messed up. Right. That's one example, just because of your thoughts. So the thought process of trying to avoid emotions is literally disrupting the natural process of our brain function, which impacts how our body functions.
Mm-hmm.
This is a weird connection that I don't know if a lot of people would understand, but when we say the mind controls the body, guys, we're not just talking about central nervous system neurons and electrons and all that stuff firing and nerves and that kind of stuff. We're literally talking about the brain controls hormone function. The hormones are the signals that tell our body to do all sorts of things. If I get stressed, if I think about something stressful, my physical body will change. If I think about something happy, my physical body will change. Here's the second aspect of that to talk about. I don't know how many between myself and other coaches that I've worked with, how many people we've talked to, or that I've heard other coaches tell me about their clients who have been stuck at a plateau. They've been following a program, they've been doing stuff, and they're just stuck for weeks or months at a time. Can't figure out what's going on. They're doing all the things, following everything 100%, and then something happens at work. Someone they've been stressed about gets fired, or they get a promotion, and all the things they were dealing with in an old job go away. Now they have a new opportunity, or they have a blowout with their spouse, and then spend the weekend working through it and figuring out what's going on and coming up with a plan. And now they have a way forward to get through whatever's been stressing them out the last 6 months, whatever it may be. There's some kind of emotional break that they have. They haven't changed their fitness routine. They haven't changed their nutrition. They haven't changed their sleep habits. Nothing has changed. The only thing that changed was the emotional stress that they were dealing with because they hadn't resolved an emotional issue. And then within a week, they start seeing progress again. Every single. So for any guy who's out there, if you feel like dealing with emotions is not manly, I would challenge you to check that, because what you're doing, we could probably do a whole talk on this, Zach.
We could,
because I'm thinking about this as I'm about to say some things, and I'm like, wow, which direction do I want to go here?
I opened the can.
Avoiding anything and not facing it head on is the opposite of what it means to me to be a man. You cannot avoid emotion and then say that you're being masculine.
Avoidance in many cases seems to be something due to fear.
Absolutely.
And so, to tap on what you're saying, the question I ask my kids is, what is courage? It's like, it's being fearless. I'm like, no, that's not courage. That's not courage.
It's the action in the face of fear.
That's it. You're taking the action despite the fear that you have.
Yep.
And so here's my, like, where I'm pumped. My 3-year-old says, you're making me cold when he gets goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps. And here's why. It's because everybody that's listened this far into the podcast, like, I'm glad you're here and you're listening, and you guys are courageous because you're going to do things. You're working towards being better at something. You're at least taking the step to get the knowledge. And so you're courageous, right? And so whatever that pitch is that you tell somebody else your why, as to why you're doing something, your conviction, there's emotion behind that. And here's what I don't want. I want to give the case that I don't want through story, and then we'll go from there. But I've got these stickers, and I now, when I see a dad doing something cool, I'll just roll up and be like, hey man, this is for you. You're doing a great job. And usually they look at me like, it's a sequence. It's almost every time. It's like, who are you?
Right.
And like,
what is this?
Do I need to fight you, or
Right.
are you selling me something? Like, what's your intent?
And
it usually doesn't start awesome. And honestly, I'd probably be the same way. I get it. And then they look at the sticker, and then it's like the walls just randomly crash, because just like this podcast, it's like, as a dad, we all get things that we don't even realize that someone else gets, because there's a common DNA in the context of our lives surround that to create the body. So I was at a live golf tournament with my son. It's the end of the day. It was hot as blazes. Oh my gosh, but it was a blast. Liv does a great job if you ever get a chance to go to the tournament. And, there's a guy right there with his 2 sons, and I give him one of these stickers. We start talking, and we were like in line to get on the shuttle to go back to the cars. And it just opened up. Like, he just started chatting, talking. So then I asked the question that now I'm very comfortable with. Before I wasn't. It's like, hey, tell me about the guy you have around you. And there was a lot of like, well, I don't really have any. Dude is only a few years older than me. And he might be listening. And so if you are, follow up with me. He ran his own business, and he had just had a complete like meltdown and heart attack. And what he had walked through and talked through is that all the different things, like, he puts on the facade, puts on the face. Everyone thinks it's cool, right? It's like a duck on the water, but the feet underneath are doing that until it implodes. And I say that because I hated hearing that story, because I hate it for him. He seemed like a great guy. And I was in a place like that at one point. and I have a lot of conversation around it. And so here's what I don't want. I do this podcast because I want awesome men to step up with the idea and the identity of I'm a skilled dad or I'm working towards it. So what does that mean? It's a holistic thing. It's not just one thing. So that you are healthy and in a place that you don't implode. Because if you're not in the fight while your kids are growing up, you're leaving them on the battlefield alone. So just like an airplane, you got to put the mask on you first and then put it on them, because if you pass out, you can't help them. So that's why I get passionate about this and why I love what you said. And I'm with you 100%. And it's with the feelings thing, like we got them. If we don't, we're robots at that point, and that's a bummer. We're missing a lot of stuff.
We can't, if our goal is to get skilled and improve from where we are today, emotions are part of that process. Here's the thing, like unfortunately, the stigma of emotions is tied to they define you. And that is the furthest thing from the from the truth. Emotions are the number one tool that we have to help us define ourselves. That's what emotions are for. Emotions let us know when something is happening that we need to address. It gives us an opportunity. It is a doorway, a window. It is a starting point for us to develop self-awareness, define our identity, and make a choice to take an action that brings us in the direction we want to go.
Yes.
If we ignore these emotions, we are willingly staying in the same place and not growing.
Yes. And maybe going backwards.
Yeah, very much going backwards, right? Because here's the deal. Self-awareness, we're going to get to another topic. Self-awareness is a skill. If you don't practice it, right? Just like in fitness, we have this concept in fitness called specific adaptation to imposed demand. Your body will get good at what you tell it to get good at. Our mind is the same way. If I practice self-awareness, I will become more self-aware. If I practice sticking my head in the sand, then I will get better at sticking my head in the sand.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Last point on this that I want to make, and obviously if you disagree, tell me, but I do think I want to differentiate the difference between recognizing and naming and finding the emotions, right, that are there, so that then we can write it out, talk it out, whatever we need to do to take care of those, so that we can remove the burden and roll. But there's a difference between like identifying and recognizing, and then like having an emotionalism where like feelings are the thing all the time, right? So there's that, there's the over emoting and
Always
and then
being in your feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that part might be a little bit more of the concern that some have, and that's not what it is, guys. I think it's a bad label, a bad brand.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there is definitely a difference between developing awareness for your emotions, and then we call that emotional intelligence, right? There's a difference between being an emotionally intelligent person and then being an overly emotional person. They are not the same thing. And I'm talking about emotional intelligence. What is going on? Why am I feeling this way? What is the root cause? And it's not focusing on here's the thing. Being self-aware of your emotions isn't about focusing on the emotion. It's about understanding I'm feeling something, and then forget about that. Why am I feeling it? So being emotionally intelligent isn't about the emotion. It's about, where is that emotion coming from? What is the situation? What is the scenario? What is the trigger? What has happened, and why? What is the belief system? What is the perception? What is in my brain that makes me see that happen, and then I feel this way? So it's a backwards path of understanding your thought. So it's mineralogical. We like to say mineralogical, right? And women are emotional. Well, here's the thing. Understanding your emotions as the entry point to your logic process changes the discussion, because your emotion is the end result of a logic loop that you have in your brain that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So in what you're doing is you're saying, hey, there's something going on. I don't know where this is coming from. I need to go understand what is my thought processes. So think about it as a logic process, not as an emotional process. That might help.
No, I love that. Yes. And then go do something about it. But you can't do anything about it until you know. I like how you put that, because oftentimes we're problem solvers. So if we look at it as a problem to solve,
Yep.
then it can change the paradigm. So there could be a whole episode around that. That could be a lot of fun.
You want to talk about number 2 real quick? Do we got time?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I do.
We talked about it a little bit. Let's just to bring it up again.
Yep.
The first thing you do after you've identified your conviction, your why, your why not, what is the one thing that you've been avoiding that you know you need to do? That's it. If you can just do that thing, and it doesn't have to be something big. It can be, I need to stop drinking a big gulp every time I go get gas. Whatever. There's something that, whether it's nutrition, whether it's I got a gym membership, I don't go as much as I know I need to go. Well, then start going more often, right? It doesn't have to be some major, join some program, join some gym, follow some big thing. Just what is something that you know you need to be doing, that you can say, the minute I commit to this and start doing this consistently, I will feel better about my example and my commitment and the identity that I'm developing that my kids are going to see.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes. Start doing that and then build on it over time. That's the easiest thing. That's number 2. That's the easiest thing to do.
I think it's really easy to probably think about the things that they are, and then it's going to take a little of that courage to step into it and go battle it.
Exactly. That's where the conviction comes through.
That's where it comes through.
Yep.
I love that as the key starting place. If you're not motivated enough to go do something, you're probably not going to go do it. So what you said about going and finding that, 100%.
And for anybody that's going to respond to what you just said is saying, well, I don't know how to get motivation. Look up the definition of motivation. It's literally whether you want to do something or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get motivation. You either want to do it or you don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to come to grips and take ownership of whichever side of that coin you're on. So if you don't want to do it, acknowledge, I don't want to do this. Okay, I've acknowledged I don't want to do this. Well, but I do also want to set an example for my kids. I do also want to be physically prepared to take care of my family if needed. Which one do you want more? Until you have one of those other things that's more important than not doing what you think you need to do, then you're always going to have that balance and that struggle. So,
yeah, that core conviction, the deep one. Not, I don't want to take out the trash, like the deep thing.
Yeah, and that's where stress comes from. Stress comes from living a life outside your identity. So if you want to reduce stress, it's the expectation of things that don't match reality or don't match where you're trying to go. So if you're trying to do X, but you're doing Y, the stress in your life is going to be way more than it needs to be. Just start doing.
Oh, that's true. I'm doing a personal reflection right now. I like how you said that. Stress comes from living your life outside of your identity. So good, man. No, I appreciate that. I feel like we could go on and on.
Probably could.
So we'll have to talk about future opportunities there, but I love your passion. And I love how you found the things that are motivating you, and more so that you're putting action to those, both for yourself, but then also helping other people. So I want to say, thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Because stuff, when we do that, that's how we have better communities, better societies, and we can just reduce some of that stress that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? they want to learn more about what you're doing, check out your
Yeah,
book.
yeah, super easy. Just type in Coach Bronson on the Googles. CoachBronson.com, Coach.Bronson on YouTube, Coach.Bronson on Instagram. And then Amazon, I got, my books are up there. I got a book coming out in September, Labor Day weekend, Body Confident, which talks a lot about some of the stuff we covered in this episode. So it's literally just what I've learned over the past several years coaching hundreds of people, and what is the thought process and what are kind of the check marks along the journey that everybody has to hit at some point in time in order to be successful. And then how can we make that into a framework that allows people to repeat the process as many times as needed? So no matter where you are, whether you're just getting started, whether you've been doing something for years and you can't figure out what the next step is, you can read this book, plop this framework down and go, okay, here's where I am. What's the next step in the process? And how do I pick up and move on to the next thing?
I'll include those in the notes as well. And that way people just click on the link. And then, I look forward to remind me when that's coming out so that I can put it out there, because I will definitely want to read it. But Bronson, thanks for being on here, man. It was a blast.
This is fun. Yeah, we definitely have to do this again. And I don't know what other platforms you're on, but I feel like some kind of live Q&A webinar or some group thing would be amazing to do.
It would be fun. I have been thinking a lot about that actually lately. So you and I are on the same wavelength. Yeah, we should talk about that. Let's do it. I don't know what that would look like, but we'll have fun doing it. I don't really care. We'll find out.
As long as it looks like that, I'm good.
We'll have fun. All right, brother. Well, hey, thank you again. And yeah, we'll see what we can bring up for the future, but keep up the good fight.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, guys and gals, if you've made this far, your brain's probably doing some things that mine are, just because of, where the conversation went and so many good things to pull from it. I'm going to listen to it again. I'm going to pull those and put them out. But here's two key takeaways that I've got, and a little bit of a challenge for you. First off, when we talk about health, you notice we didn't talk a whole lot about like doing burpees, push-ups, pull-ups, and hitting the treadmill, right? Or taking jogs. Like, those are all things that we can go do, but for what purpose? Why are we doing it? But we did go down the path, and it really applies to us as dads and parents and work and whatever. It all starts right here in the head. The battle's starting there. And then in our heart, the two are completely aligned and connected in ways we don't even know. And so I want to go and throw the challenge out that Bronson talked about, which was go find that core conviction. What is your core conviction? My core conviction with Skilled Dad is because I've seen the things that I don't want to be, and I also know the things I do want to be. And I know there's other guys that are in a similar boat. And when Bronson talked about the identity of maybe when you have a mirror that's placed in front of you, you don't realize it, and it's different than what you thought it was. And you're like, oh, I'm going to do something about that. That's what this is. And hopefully that's what it is for you. That's what Skilled Dad is. And it's helped me be a better dad. And that's part of my thing. So what is your core conviction? Because here's the thing. If you're here and you're listening to this right now, you are already courageous. So go take that courage. Go do those things. Go find that core conviction. And then you can repeat that to yourself when it gets tough, when it gets fun, and you can build on yourself, which then builds on your family, on your community. And that's where change happens. And it's good stuff. So thank you for listening to this podcast. We're going to see you next time. But until then, take these things, see what you can apply, and then repeat on your journey to becoming the Skilled Dad.